Alright, I wanted to make a video about these two speakers. Here we have a Genelec, on the right a Genelec 8040B, and on the left we have a JBL Studio 530. These are, in my opinion, are both legendary speakers, and the reason they show up in this video together is because I believe that this is an entry-level speaker. This is where you should start, and you should ignore everything else until you're up to this point, and that's end game. This is reference level. Now, I believe that there's two. The reason and everybody's opinion will vary. This is my opinion, and I believe there's two things that make a good speaker largely. First, frequency response curve, a flat frequency response, so accurate sound reproduction, and number two, good sound quality. So whatever, you could still have a really flat frequency response, but then, you know, whatever, across the board, it may just sound muffled. So those are the two things: clarity, or, you know, clarity of whatever's reproduced, and accurate reproduction in terms of for the same volume level across the frequency band. And of course, this JBL, needless to say, this JBL 8040 is an industry standard. It's a studio monitor. It's self-powered. It's bi-amplified internally. But it's a $2,400 pair of speakers. Each one is $1,175, or about $1,200 a piece. So for two of these, it's basically $2,400, and that's really expensive. And these come in at $600, I think, list price, but they're regularly found for about $300 for a pair. And so these are super cheap compared to these. And I feel like for those two metrics, clarity and accurate sound reproduction, this is probably the best you're going to be able to do until you get to this point, in a worthwhile way. And I'll explain what I mean about that in general. Because there are other studio monitors that are, of course, more expensive than this, that are less expensive than this, that do have a better frequency response curve, but that do also have better clarity than these. But they're not as good as these, and there's some compromises. Largely self-noise, and I'll get into that in a second. So that's why these speakers are side by side. I personally believe that after that, whoever, not an audio professional or someone who's working in a studio, but someone who's just consuming media, listening to music, I believe this is first game, end game, until you get to $2,400, and then this is it. I use this as an example, but anything from the Genelec line really is end game, because that's most probably how the artist intended for the music to be heard, considering these are an industry standard. Genelecs are an industry standard, and almost every studio will have at least one pair of Genelecs, and many of them use, and many artists also use, and music engineers or audio engineers use Genelecs or some equivalent studio monitor to master songs and master audio on. So how is it supposed to sound? Here you go, Genelecs. Up till that point, $2,400 is ridiculous, it's expensive, and so it's crazy just for media consumption, and so I think that's where these come in. For $300, I think these are phenomenal in the way of flat frequency response and accurate sound reproduction. So flat frequency response and clarity, I don't think it gets better than this until you get up to this point. There are many hundreds of speakers between these two, but I think at that point, in my opinion, you're really chasing sound signature, but you're not really getting any. In my opinion, you're not getting any real benefits or real improvements in metric in terms of actual sound quality and a flat frequency response from these. These have been described and are sometimes called a little boring, which is probably due to their flat frequency response. They're not like a general hyped or scooped audiophile speaker where the highs and the lows are accentuated. They're very well controlled. These also do scale with improved gear. If you have a better DAC or a better componentry, these will resolve the nuances. I'm very, very impressed with them in that regard. And I think that has to go with them having not like super complicated of like what's it called, crossover, and there being a lot of attention to quality of drivers as well as the design of the cabinet. A couple things I want to mention about these. The engineering or the design thought that went into it for a $300 pair of speakers is insane. The horn tweeter has its own enclosure inside the cabinet, which is supposed to help isolating it from the rest of the enclosure. The horn itself has a very elaborate waveguide. The 5 1/4 inch woofer is aluminum cast frame, not a stamped steel frame. And in my experience, this doesn't always hold true, but generally an aluminum cast frame is more rigid and is usually a higher quality driver. Also, the 5 1/4 inch woofer is recessed in its own waveguide. If you take this grill off, there's its own. It sort of has its own waveguide inside, as well as the enclosure is also angled, and so that's supposed to help with. I'm not a speaker engineer or speaker builder, but these angled enclosures help with internal reflection and resonances that may affect the sound quality. And then also on the back, this has dual binding posts. So it has 2 pairs of binding posts, which offers a ability to bi-amp or bi-wire the speaker. And so I think that's very neat. And for a $300 pair, I think these are amazing. Now, of course, this is an cast aluminum speaker. These beat these in every metric. So the Genelecs will beat the JBLs in every metric. I mean, you just can't compare something that's $2,000 more expensive. I mean, you can, and I am, but it's crazy that I'm even able to do so. Speaks volumes about this speaker. But I think this also has another like, I guess, Genelec tax or premium, because everything that probably comes out of the Genelec factory is tested, overlooked, and really put through a fine-tooth comb, because these are professional grade. It's a professional grade audio tool for mastering. It's not really an audiophile speaker for consumption. It's really a tool, and so it needs to meet strict specifications on every account, from the amplifiers to the drivers to the componentry that's present inside the speaker, to perform perform very, very predictably. And so you should be able to sit down in front of any 8040B and it should sound like any other 8040B you've heard anywhere else. And I think that's where some of the price premium comes from. And of course, these are made in Finland, cast aluminum cabinets. I mean, they're phenomenal. I mean, and they have this steel grill. But back to these, and so if you can't quite afford 300, I think the only thing I could recommend before these are the NUMI 5 BS5s. Those are like 110 repair. And I think they have a 4-inch woofer. NUMI, yeah, BS5s, and those are amazing speakers as well, but not nearly as good as these. I think these are first game, end game speakers. The only thing I would do with these, if you're using these, is if you have an additional budget, is pair them with the subwoofer, and because the lower frequencies aren't as full as something like this or other. I mean, these are pretty comparable to other bookshelf 6.5-inch woofer bookshelves because of the waveguide and the really high quality woofer that's included. It's a cast aluminum frame with a really nice waveguide for the woofers recessed in there. And so that's why these two are here. And so it's largely because for price and for budget, I think it's super hard to beat the sound quality of this and the accuracy of this until you get up to studio monitor level. Of course, that means if you prefer a different sound signature, a different, tone or something, there's going to be many hundreds of options between these two. For me example, if you're strictly after accurate sound reproduction and clear and good transparency to source or good clarity, these are awesome. Now, one more thing I wanted to say. The reason I think there's a gap between these and these, there's another stop point that I think is a good difference between these, and that would be like the Kali Audio Studio monitors. But this is why you don't see it here for me personally. I am very sensitive to self noise from a speaker, and these Genelecs have little to none. When they're on, unless you have your ear about less than 1 foot away from the tweeter, you can't hear these and you can't tell that they're on. Whereas other self-powered studio monitors, I can hear them all the way out to 2-3 feet. So I use these at my desk, and hearing that constant hiss or the self noise from when studio monitors are on drives me crazy. I would much rather have these as desk studio near field speakers than anything until I get up to this point. Now, if you're using them in a living room setup, your miles may vary. The Kali Audios or other things may not produce as much. You may not be able to hear it, 6, 7, 10 feet away, the self noise. So that's why for me I've separated them like this. I use these speakers to reference any other, if I want to see what a song should sound like, or if I want to listen to music in as close to its intended form, I'll play it on these. I also use these to reference or bench or use as a meter stick for other speakers I've tried to see if they're pretty close to source. So I use this as a reference to check other speakers that come through, see if they have any nuanced audio reproduction, any nuanced frequency bumps or valleys. Also, I think it's fair to mention speakers that I've tested in the past. So I'll just go through that real quick. I've tried Bose 301s, Bic Venturi DV62SIs, Paradigm Studio 60 V2s, Paradigm Persona 7Fs. I really dislike those speakers. Genelec 8040Bs, you see right here. Yamaha MSP7 studio monitors. ELAC Debut 6.2s. KEF Q150s. Those are excellent speakers as well, but they can't get as loud as these without the lower frequencies kind of fall apart. I would be happy to use those KEF Q150s in a close near field setting. Polk S20s, Polk ES20s. Polk ES20s are also excellent. They measure very flat, and I think those or these are interchangeable until you get up to something this level. I did A/B the Polk S20s as well as the Polk ES20s against the Studio 530s. So I tried all three of them, ABC I guess. The ES20s, the Polk S20s, the ES20s, and these Studio 530s. Of the three, I preferred these the most. They had the most clarity as well as the most controlled frequency response. The Polk ES20s had a slightly more lower end, but I do run these with the sub, so that didn't make a difference. But the lower end quality on these were definitely better. And then JBL 570s. So I've tried all those, and what came out on top are these two. These run with subwoofers. These I do not. Frequency response, lower frequency response on these are excellent. And that's my opinion. I think that there's the Numi BS5s, then either the Studio 5, the JBL Studio 530s, the Polk ES20s, or the KEF Q150s, and then there's these. And I think beyond those three bookshelves, specifically, I think this one's the best of those three. For $300 or $600 on sale for a pair or $600 list price for a pair. I think this is first game, end game, and then this, if you really want the gold standard, the reference pair, these are just this is just for nice to have. And after having listened to these, I can say that you're not missing too much if you're just consuming media or just listening to songs. This paired with a good sub, I mean, gets to like 90% of what these can do. 95 maybe a stretch, but 90% of what these can do for like $2,000 less. So there you have it. That's my opinion. First game, end game, JBL 530s with a good amp and integrated amp with a good decent subwoofer. I run these with the Yamaha AS301s and a SVS SB2000, and then I run these with just I run these Genelec 8040Bs with another Genelec 8040Bs. So I just have two Genelec 8040Bs, no sub or anything, and that sits on my desk as my reference set, and this is my listening set. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed that. Take care.